Hey everybody, this is John for Pioneer Nexus MTG coming at you with another deck guide, one we should have made a long time ago, and that is Green-White XX Auras. Now this is a deck, this most similar would be Hexproof in Modern, and ironically doesn't even really play that many Hexproof creatures. It has Glade Cover Scout, and that's about it. The rest of the deck is just a bunch of good value and enchantments and try to get your opponent dead. One of the newer effects to the deck is Screeve Defector Might, which allows you to protect your creatures from removal spells, etc. And the rest of the deck is built around Light Paws and Shram. Shram, whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. Light Paws is very wordy, but basically whenever you cast an aura, you can search your library for a different named aura than you control with mana value equal or less than the one you cast and put it on Light Paws. This allows you to kind of turn your one enchantment into two and just kind of build a very big creature and kill your opponent quickly. Now historically these versions are always very good against decks that are not trying to interact, so decks like Mono Green, decks like Lotus Field Combo tend to be very good matchups. Decks that are trying to interact, some draws of blue-white control, especially ones that involve temporary lockdown or early removal spells into sweepers tend to be very rough for this deck, as well as Rakdos Midrange and Rakdos Sack. Beyond that, you play a bunch of powerful enchantments, headlined by Ethereal Armor, which gives +1/+1 for each enchantment you control, as well as First Strike, and then All That Glitters, which gives +1/+1 for each artifact or enchantment you control, basically building a very large big idiot and smashing your opponent to death. Then you play a bunch of utility ones. Cartouche of Solidarity creates a 1/1, also gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 in First Strike. Griftspoon gives +1/+1 in flying, can be recurred from the graveyard. Sentinel Eyes gives +1/+1 in vigilance, and can be recurred from the graveyard. Kaya's Ghost Form, one of the ones that allows you to go fetch something, or allows you to bring the creature back whenever it leaves the battlefield, even if it's exiled. Hammer Hand, target creature can't block, gives +1/+1 in haste. Audacity, it's basically card drawing, your creature gets +2/+0. Or Audacity, whenever it goes in the graveyard, draw a card. So, kind of a pseudo Rancor-esque effect. Generous Visitor, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And it is a 1/1 spirit itself. So you have a bunch of 1-drops. You try to build a big dumb idiot, kill your opponent quickly. Light Paws and Shram allow you to recoup some of the disadvantage of putting everything on one basket. Warbar's Blessing, never enters the battlefield. Enchanted creature fights up to one target creature, gets +0/+2. It is a kind of a removal spell that you can tutor up with Light Paws. And Alpha Authority, enchanted creature has hexproof, can't be blocked by more than one creature. Makes it difficult for your opponent to interact if you happen to get this on a creature. Sideboard is a bunch of utility stuff, mainly slanted obviously towards grinding matchups and matchups that kind of give you problems. Portable Hole for a little bit of interaction against decks like Mono Green, Mono White Humans, etc. Hushbringer shuts down ETB effects. Adonto Vanguard, it helps against removal heavy matchups, being you pay 4 to make it indestructible. Mortal Obstinacy, oh lord. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, never deals combat damage. You may sacrifice it if you do, destroy target enchantment. Extraction Specialist allows you to rebuy your creatures, your Shrams, your Light Paws, etc. Leyline of the Void, clearly here for Greasefang and the Phoenix matchups, but mainly Greasefang, as that is one of the few decks that can race you. Gigantha, you get to run that as a companion, so why not? So this is labeled as 4-color, but it's really green-white, splashing a couple of different enchantments that you either get with Light Paws or cast off of your mana confluences. As we already kind of talked about, the power of this deck is can be incredibly quick, can overpower slower aggro decks as well as slow combo decks. Slow being relative, as this deck can sometimes kill on turn 3, sometimes most of the time turn 4. So this deck has very good racing speed against Lotus Field Combo and Mono Green. Obviously, struggles against plethora removal, Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, Stomp, and all Liliana of the Veil, especially, as well as the sweepers out of Rakdos, give it fits. Blue-white control depends on the build of blue-white. You know, it has to have very specific interaction in the early turns and not be relying on 4 and 5 mana sweepers. As this deck can kind of get under that a little bit. Now, there is one more version, is the pure Selesnya version. Not really a whole lot different, other than you're not stretching to cast some of those other ones. You get to run a couple more copies of Generous Visitor because you're not stretching your mana base as much. But a lot of the enchantments are the same. Rune of Sustenance, this is kind of a crypt creature, has lifelink, allowing you to race a little bit better. Touch of the Spirit Realm is kind of a removal spell. Annex Century, whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls mana value 3 or less until Annex Century leaves the graveyard. This is very much akin to a something like Skyclave Apparition out of some of the Angels decks, etc. But, you know, gives you a removal spell on the sideboard. Rune of Sustenance is a way to race in racing situations with a lifelink. Ossification, whenever you're playing some basics, allows you to remove any creature or planeswalker. Jawbone Duelist, Double Strike Toxic 1. This is very much like Illuminator Virtuoso, which a lot of these decks used to play, especially for reaching situations. Lucky Offering, good way to blow up artifacts, 3 mana or less. Portable Holes is a little bit of an early interaction, and Ranger's Guile as a way to protect your creatures. This deck has kind of popped up at the Pro Tour. It had a deep finish there, but has once again kind of faded into obscurity. Much like Creativity a little bit, it is a powerful deck that can, in the right circumstances, do quite well, but overall is maybe a step down in power from some of the other decks in the format, and much like any other pseudo-aggressive deck in the format, it struggles as long as Rakdos is kind of the top deck in the format. This is definitely a deck to pay attention to, and I did have a deck guide for it earlier, but never published it, and that's kind of a little bit outdated now. So we're working on doing the updated version here now. Like I said, the closest comparison would be Modern Boggles, which is no longer really a deck in the Modern format, but was a deck that tried to put a hexproof creature into play, suit it up, kill your opponent quickly. Really required specific avenues of interaction. This version, a little bit more vulnerable to things like Fatal Push and such, but overall, if you're against a bunch of decks that are not interacting with you, or if they only have light interaction, or if they're red-based interaction, you can kind of outgrow that quite quickly. Particularly black interaction is the worst for this. Liliana, Fatal Push, Go for the Throat, Sweepers, etc. But Sweepers usually in conjunction with their early interaction, as well as Edict effects, Shieldred's. Edict is another one that's definitely a problem for it. This deck doesn't play a ton of creatures, so it's very easy to snipe the one big creature that your opponent's trying to build up. But overall, a good Aurus pilot can have a fairly successful run with the deck, and it's certainly a deck that we will do some gameplay on the channel, but a deck that we did kind of have to cover, and we had not covered yet on the channel. So if you like this kind of Pioneer content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you for our next video.